Hey everyone, Chris here from VarsityGaming, and it has been a while since the last Siege School episode. Almost 4 months to be exact. For those of you who have been watching Siege School for a while, you'll know that I, not too long ago, said that I was going to be doing this about once, maybe twice a month, depending on how I was feeling, and then I just ended up not making a single Siege School episode for 4 months. The main reason was because I was getting tired of the series and didn't really want to stress myself out too much making them, so I just took a break. But I am back with another episode. And this episode is basically going to be a rehash of a previous one, about which operators to buy. In the older version of this video, I covered all the base operators and all the DLC operators up until that point. Today I'm only going to talk about the DLC ops. The reason being is because you can still use my old video as a reference for which operators to buy from the base ones, but all of them are now free, as long as you bought the standard edition. If you bought the starter edition, you're shit out of luck, I'm not going to go over that. But today we're going to talk about which DLC operator to buy. This is going to cover every single DLC op from Buck and Frost all the way up to Alibi and Maestro. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to go through two lists. Both lists are showing which operators you should buy in what order. The first one is using a new system that I kind of just came up with on the spot, and I think works for the most part. And then the second list is what my personal opinion is. And one thing I want to add quickly before we get into the lesson is there may be a large amount of blocks without any footage at all. I tried to pull relevant footage for each individual operator, but that could be hard sometimes, so whenever I don't have any footage, you'll just see the operator itself on the screen or some similar image. So with the first list, this is how I made it work. So I wrote down a list of all the operators and I had 4 categories to rank them on: weapons, ability, utility, and relevance. Each of these were marked on a 1 to 3 scale, 1 being the worst and 3 being the best. All of these rankings are all personal opinion as well, but I went with my gut instinct. And to explain the categories a bit, the first one, weapons. This judges the damage and overall, I guess, goodness of a gun. It's kind of hard to explain, but just how good the gun is compared to other weapons. Second category being ability. This is based on the ease of use, the advantages of the ability, and how often you'll actually get it to work. Because some operators have really good abilities, but it really does not work all that often. Alright, third category being utility. This was ranked based on how well it works with the team and how it helps the team overall. Because some operators have very selfish gadgets and some have very team-friendly gadgets. And since Siege is a team-based game, I categorize the ones that have higher overall utility for their team as better. And the last category is relevance. This one is completely based off just my gut instinct and has no scientific data at all. But its relevance, how often they are picked or needed. This one was the hardest one to judge because some operators are needed on some maps more than others. But anyways, let's get into the list. So since I ranked all the categories based on a scale of 1 to 3, I just added up each individual score to get a total score for the operator. And we're going to go from the top of the list all the way down to the bottom. So we'll start with the only 2 operators to get a perfect score of 12. The first operators being Habana. Habana has 2 amazing weapons, the Bearing 9 and the Type 89. Even though the Bearing 9 is going to get nerfed soon and will be pretty much unusable, it's still a very good weapon. Both of them have high damage output and will just shred opponents. And just having 2 guns overall makes her a very good operator to have. Now her ability is the X-Cairo pellets, which she can use to destroy reinforcements, either hatches or reinforced walls. And since destruction is so key in this game, she automatically gets a 3 just for having hard destruction. And Habana gets another 3 in utility because she works so well with a team. You can coordinate which walls to break and how to push in, and it helps your team so much. And the last category, relevance, Habana is picked in almost every single round of every single map. She's just too good not to pick. She's not overpowered, she's just so good. So that's why I think Habana should be one of the first 2 operators that you buy. Now moving on to the second operator is Mira. Mira also scored a perfect 12 across all 4 categories. Her Vector is a very, very powerful gun that can just shred opponents because of how fast it fires. Although it has a lot of recoil, it still just decimates opponents. And then she has the Pocket Shotgun, which is so useful for making rotation holes and peeking holes. This way you don't need to use impacts, and you also don't need someone else to use their shotgun, they can go a different weapon. Her ability pretty much speaks for itself. It is one of the biggest game-changing abilities in the entire game. No other operator has had such a drastic change on the meta as Mira. Her mirrors let you look into a room while also being behind cover. They are incredibly strong and give the defending team a fighting chance against the attackers. And because anyone on her team can use it, her utility is through the roof. You can put the mirrors down and have different teammates watching different angles. So she just helps the team so much. And then for her relevance, she's also 3 because she's picked on almost every single objective. There are a few objectives on some maps that she is not a necessary pick, but she can still be beneficial there. So I believe those are the first 2 operators you should buy, Habana and Mira. Next we have 2 operators with a score of 11. The first one being Legion. Legion has a very strong primary submachine gun, which is the T5. He also has a shotgun, which is okay, but almost everyone will use the T5, and it is an amazing weapon. It has a good fire rate and good damage and good recoil, which is very good on defense. Even though normally a shotgun would bring down the score, since Legion's SMG is so good and you should always be using it, he still gets a score of 3 in weapons. For ability, Legion gets a score of 3, because his gadget is super easy to use, all you do is throw a goo mine, and you get more the longer you stay alive. And the advantages are really good because it lets you know when someone goes through a certain area and also prevents teams from planting the diffuser when they have a goo needle in their leg, which is fairly common in the higher ranks when people are pushing in at the last second. However, for utility, he only gets a 2. Although Legion is really good with a team, and it helps the team overall, he gets a lower score because it's highly dependent on the player. Although this video is primarily based off the Platinum and Diamond lobbies, there are still some Legions who like to roam a lot and try to get kills. If you die early, you get much less utility with your ability, and you don't help your team nearly as much. And even if you're not roaming and you just somehow get picked off early, then your utility goes way down. Whereas other operators can put down all their gadgets right away, Legion's highly dependent on staying alive. So that's why he lost 1 point there. And then for relevance, he gets a 3 because he's picked on almost every single defense round. Having a Legion on any site on any map is always beneficial. You want to slow down the attackers from pushing in as much as possible and also punish them if they push in at the last second. So that's why I think Legion should be the 3rd or 4th operator that you buy. And then next for a score of 11 we have Buck. Buck got a score of 3 on everything except for weapons where he got a 2. He does have 2 strong weapons, the C8 and the Cameras. The Cameras is a DMR which does very high damage, but like any DMR it has some faults. DMRs can only shoot so fast, which means that if someone is pushing you and shooting at you, you're very likely to lose the fight if you don't land every single shot perfectly. And because of this, most people choose Buck C8. However, the C8 has a shit ton of recoil, probably the biggest recoil of any gun in the entire game. The recoil is a lot more manageable if you use sights like the Reflex, Holographic, or for some reason are using the red dot sight. That makes it more manageable, however, it is still very high. And then if you use the ACOG, you might as well grab a barf bag because it's going to make you so nauseated just looking at it. So because of that, Buck only gets a score of 2 in the weapons. However, he makes up for it in the rest of the rankings. For ability, he got a 3 because his gadget is super easy to use and gives you a ton of advantages. All you do is shotgun open the floor in a bunch of places, either you're on top or on bottom, it doesn't matter. And because he can destroy the roof above him, unlike Sledge, that's why his ability gets a 3. It makes him so much more useful because if, say, you go Sledge because you think they're going to go in the basement, but instead they go on the top floor, Sledge isn't as useful. However, if you have a Buck, it doesn't matter whether they go on the top floor, bottom floor, or middle floor, he can destroy them no matter what. For utility, he also gets a 3 because opening up the floor for your team is very beneficial. Soft destruction is almost just as necessary as hard destruction, especially when you have someone like Buck who can make as many holes as he can. If you bring someone like Ash or someone with breaching charges, they can only make 3 holes in the floor. Buck can make around 20 holes with just the skeleton key. And then lastly, for relevance, Buck gets a 3 because he's relevant on almost every single objective of every single map. Yes, there are some objectives which have impenetrable floors or ceilings, but Buck can still be useful. Having that soft destruction from a distance opens up a lot more possibilities instead of people needing to run in and break walls by standing next to them. And that's why I think Buck should be your 3rd or 4th picked operator. Alright, from here on out is where the list is going to get a lot more messy, and I'm going to start running through operators a lot more quickly. For Habana, Mira, Legion, and Buck, I went through them in great detail, but I'm going to start rushing through them because a lot of these operators have similar advantages or disadvantages. For the next category, we have operators that scored a total of 10. And there's 5 operators to choose from here. First, we're going to talk about Dhoka. Dhoka got a 2 for weapons because while her DMR is a strong weapon, it still doesn't compare to an assault rifle. And then her other primary weapon is the Boss G shotgun, which while powerful, is not really what you want on attack. Her score makes up for it because she has the SMG-12 sidearm and to a lesser extent the C75. However, with the SMG-12 nerf coming in, Dhoka is going to get hit very hard. If we were talking about this video post SMG-12 nerf, Dhoka would probably get a score of 1 for weapons. But for now, we'll give her a 2. For ability, she gets a 3 because it's very easy to use. You use your iPad, you make a call, and you start hunting down the roamers. and if she ever finds a defender's phone and hacks the cameras, it just gives you so many advantages for the attacking team. For utility, she also gets a 3 because of how well she works with a team. Your main goal is to make a call and have your team hunt down the roamers, or have your team push in. She's just overall a team player. And then for relevance, she gets a 2. She's being picked a lot more now this season than previous seasons, however, there's still a lot of rounds without her. The main reason why she is picked is because if you combo her with Jackal and then Lion, it's just full AIDS combo and works very well. Moving on to the next one, we have Lion. For weapons, Lion got a 2. Lion has 3 primary weapons to his disposal. The V308, which is a really strong assault rifle, and highly recommend that being the only weapon you use. And then he has 2 other weapons which aren't that good. The 417 Marksman Rifle, which is by far the worst DMR in the entire game, and then the SG CQB Shotgun. While it is a strong shotgun, I do not recommend using it on attack, because on attack you want to be able to clear the distance. Shotguns don't do that. So because of his shittier weapons, Lion only gets a 2, even though his V308 is a very good weapon. For ability, he gets a 3 because it's still fucking overpowered. You press a button, you scan the entire defending team, and know where they are if they're moving. Super easy for hunting down roamers, and even easier for punishing defenders sitting on site. And then he obviously gets a 3 for utility because of how much his ability helps the team. You click a button, your entire team benefits. And in relevance, he gets a 2, only because he's not picked nearly as much as he used to be. When he had 3 scans with 10-second cooldown, he was the number 1 pick every single time. Now that he has 2 scans with 20-second cooldown, he's not picked nearly as much. Next up for the scores of 10, we have Maestro. Now I want to say this right now before I talk about Maestro and in the future talk about Alibi. It is very hard to judge these 2 new operators because of how new they are. The season has only been out for a month. It is still not at all enough time to tell how well they fit into the meta and how they'll change the meta themselves. So take my criticism of Maestro with a grain of salt. For Maestro, he has a score of 3 when it comes to weapons, just because of his LMG primary. He is the only defender to have an LMG as a primary weapon, and it is fucking amazing. Although the recoil can kick around a bit, it still is amazing to use. Having an ACOG and being able to hold down an angle on defense with 80 bullets just cannot be beat. Not to mention his sidearm pistol, which I haven't really talked about much this video, but his sidearm pistol is just super strong. It has like the strength of a revolver with the recoil control of any other pistol. Now for his ability, he can put down 2 bulletproof cameras and scan on them whenever he's on them. He can also shock people for 5 damage apiece. This ability gets a score of 3 because of how hard it is to get rid of those cameras. Unless the enemy team is running a sledge, you're really not going to use much to get rid of them. You don't want to use an ash charge or grenades when you can use them to kill someone or breach open a hole. And also being able to see through smoke is a huge advantage. So for his ability, he gets a 3. However, for utility, he only gets a 2. Even though these cameras are super strong and will definitely help the team a lot, the big downside is that the other defenders on the team cannot move the camera at all. So it's highly dependent on Maestro leaving them at a good angle and also leaving them in a spot where they can actually see and help the team. But moving on to relevance, right now Maestro has a relevance of 2. Like I said, it's very early in the season. It's hard to tell how often he'll be picked, but he seems like more of a budget Echo. And speaking of Echo, he's going to be the next operator we're talking about. Echo also got a score of 10. For weapons, he gets a 2. For his primaries, he has the MP5 silenced and then a shotgun. The shotgun is by far the worst shotgun in the entire game. Useless, absolutely useless. The only thing it can really be used for is destruction, like opening rotation holes or opening hatches. And the MP5 is pretty decent. The benefit of it is the ACOG. Having the silenced attachment is kind of hit or miss. I'm not a huge fan of it. But having the Bearing 9 sidearm definitely makes up for having the shitty shotgun. So overall, Echo gets a score of 2. And for ability, he gets a score of 3, just because of how strong it is now. Since they reworked the camera system, any defender can get on the Echo drones and spot on them. So this kind of spills into the next category, utility, which he also got a 3. That's why Echo is so strong. His ability is super good, his utility is super good. But moving on to relevance, he only has a score of 2. The reason why I gave him a score of 2 is because usually there's other operators that are much more necessary. For almost every defending site, you'll want a Mira, Smoke, and then maybe a Jaeger and a Bandit. And since you already have Mira and Smoke, that means you have 2 anchors on site. You really don't need a third one with Echo. And while Echo could take someone's place like Mira's, Mira's still such a strong operator since everyone can easily benefit from her ability. So that's why I gave Echo relevance of 2. But that's enough about Echo. Moving on to the last operator in the 10-point category, we have Sofia. And I feel like this one I'll probably get ripped into a little bit. I gave her weapons a score of 2. The reason being, even though LMGs did get buffed, you still mainly want to pick her M762 over the LMG. However, this could just be me. I felt like the M762 had a lot more to be desired. The fire rate on it is fairly low for an assault rifle, however its damage is pretty favorable. But just having that low fire rate kind of ruined it for me. So that's why Sofia only got a score of 2 for her weapons. However, her ability is super strong. She basically combines Ashe and Ela. She's a bit weaker than Ashe because her impacts go off immediately, not giving her time to swap over to her weapon by the time the impact breaches. But she's technically a better Ela because her concussions can bounce off walls, go longer distances, and immediately set off as soon as it's next to someone. And because of that, the utility also goes through the roof. If, say, you're pushing in through an area and none of you have drones, you can use Sofia's Grismots to drone out the room essentially. Shoot in 2 Grismots, wait for them to explode, and then push in. However, for relevance, she only got a score of 2 because, like I said, she's kind of an Ashe-Ela mix. But most of the time people will rather choose Ashe over Sofia because Ashe is a 3-speed, has a better weapon. The only thing she lacks is the concussion mines, but she has flashbangs to make up for it. Alright, and that's it for all of the operators with a score of 10. So we have Dhoka, Lion, Maestro, Echo, and Sofia. Now for a score of 9, we have 2 operators, the first one being Vigil. Vigil got a score of 3 for his weapons just because he has 2 amazing weapons. He has the K1A, normally called the Kia, and the SMG-12 sidearm. However, just like I said with Dhoka, once an SMG-12 nerf hits, his score will probably go down to a 2. But having essentially 2 primary weapons running around on defense as a roamer is amazing. You just can't beat that, so that's why he gets a score of 3. For Vigil's ability, I gave it a score of 2, mainly because of how knowledgeable you have to be to actually use it. Even though I'm talking about mainly platinum and diamond lobbies, it's still very hard to use his ability super efficiently, especially ever since it got nerfed to a 12-second duration and a 6-second cooldown, from its previous 30-second duration and 12-second cooldown. It'll help a lot for roaming, but it only lasts so long before the attackers really push in on you. And since it has an area of effect, it's really easy for attackers to call out the flank when they see the fuzzies coming in from a distance. But for utility, Vigil only gets a score of 1. The reason for this is because, like I said at the beginning of the video, utility is based on cohesion with your team, and how it helps the team overall. Although Vigil can delay the attackers and waste their time as they try to hunt him down, his ability itself does not help the team that much. It has no direct influence, and he's a very selfish operator. He's still good, it's just selfish. And then lastly, for relevance, he gets a 3 because he's one of the most picked roamers in the entire game. This is mainly because of his weapons and fragging capability. So even though he's a selfish operator, a lot of people will pick him just to easily frag out. But now we'll go on to the other operator with a score of 9, is Blackbeard. Blackbeard got a score of 3 for weapons. He has a very strong assault rifle and a very strong DMR. Now I did say before that DMRs weren't the greatest because you'd normally want an assault rifle over it. However, because of Blackbeard's ability, which is the shield on front of your gun, the DMR is actually pretty beneficial. The shield gives you more time to react and land those shots that you need to hit. And because of how beneficial the shield is, that means Blackbeard got a score of 3 for both weapons and ability. However, just like Vigil, for utility he gets a score of 1 because his gadget does not help the team overall at all. It only helps him. They're both selfish operators, but they both frag out. However, for relevance, Blackbeard gets a score of 2 because he's picked fairly often on most maps. Any maps with a lot of windows and repelling points, you'll want a Blackbeard to hold the angle. So since we've covered the first 11 DLC operators, now these next 9 are going to go through very quickly. A lot of their scores kind of speak for themselves, but I'll get into them whenever necessary. We have 4 operators with a score of 8. The first one I'm going to talk about is Finca. Now if you watch streams, you'll always hear me constantly talk about how completely overpowered Finca is, but there's also some disadvantages with her. For her weapons, she got a score of 2 because she really doesn't have that many good weapons. She does have the sausage shotgun, which is really good for meme rushing, but that's about it. She has the Spear 308, which is a really strong assault rifle, but there's other better weapons out there. And then she has the Russian LMG, the 6P41, which is good comboed with her ability. However, it relies way too much on her actual ability to get use. And speaking of ability, Finca got a score of 3 for her ability. It has so many advantages and so few disadvantages and helps the entire team, it just gets an automatic 3. You can't really dispute that. Giving everyone 20 health, 0 recoil, faster reloading, faster aim down sight, and so much more just makes her so powerful. But even though it helps the team a lot, for utility I only gave her a score of 2. It would have been a 3, however, the recoil control. It does help at the lower levels, but at the higher levels it can really fuck over a lot of players. Let's say you're in the middle of a gunfight, shooting at someone, and then Finca pops her nano boost. All of a sudden, you're compensating for recoil that doesn't exist and you're aiming at the floor. And then for relevance, she only got a score of 1 because her relevance mainly goes down because of the higher ranks and the recoil that I mentioned. If you're already at Platinum or Diamond, you should be able to control your recoil enough that you don't need the Finca boost to assist you. However, her relevance does go up if you go down in ranks. Alright, the next operator with a score of 8 is Ying. Ying got a 2 across the board for every single category. For weapons, her damage on the LMG is pretty decent, but the recoil is kind of hard to control and the low fire rate kind of doesn't make it the best. Her other primary is a shotgun, which most of the time you don't want to use. It has its very few niche situations to use, but you mainly want to use the LMG. Her ability got a 2 because it is very strong, however it's easily countered by Jaeger, and it's also incredibly inconsistent. I've had many situations where I throw a Candela right next to someone and they're not blind at all because they look into a corner. However, if I ever try to do that, I'll be blind as a bat as soon as they throw in the Candela. But whenever it does work, it works very well and definitely helps you secure the kills or the area. For utility, again a 2, because it works fairly well with the team, but it can also be a huge disadvantage for your team, since they won't be able to push in with you while you're flashing. Or if they do, they'll just be blind as well. And for relevance, she did have a relevance of 3 before because of her smokes and combo with Glaz. However, once those got removed, she got pushed down to a 2. Because she still picked a lot for the bomb game mode, she does help very much securing the site, but there's also better operators that you can choose that will help benefit the team more. Alright, next operator is Jackal. Jackal got a score of 3 for his weapons because he has 2 very strong primaries, the PDW-9 and the C7E, an SMG and assault rifle respectively. The PDW-9, although it has lower damage and higher recoil, has 50 bullets and an ACOG, which is fairly strong in attack. And the C7E has very little recoil, high damage, but 30 bullets. Overall, both very good weapons. And then the secondary shotgun also helps a lot with opening up the floors and the walls if you ever need that. For his ability, Jackal only got a score of 2. Although his ability is really strong for tracking down roamers, it can put him in a vulnerable state when he has to sit there and scan with really easily anyone able to push him and kill him. And if you have the ability toggled on and you get shot at, it pretty much blinds your entire screen. So there are a decent amount of disadvantages, but whenever you use it right, the ability is fairly strong. The only downside is that his ability most of the time just forces people to run back to site and sit there, kind of rendering it useless. The main thing you want from his ability is to get a kill. A lot of the time that won't happen. And for utility, he gets a 2 because if your team is super well coordinated and pushes together, they can track down the roamer and kill them. However, like I said, people will often just run back to site and it kind of doesn't benefit the team at all at that point. And then for relevance, he gets a 1. Keep in mind, like I said, this is for both Platinum and Diamond lobbies. It's very rare that you see a Jackal run. The only time you ever really see him is if people are running the full AIDS combo, which is Dhoka, Jackal, and Lion. But for the most part, he's rarely run. He's more of a gold and below operator because he punishes people roaming. Alright, and the last operator with a score of 8 is Valkyrie. Valkyrie got a score of 1 for her weapons. She has the Spaz 12 shotgun, which is fairly weak, ever since they nerfed semi-shotguns. And then she has the MPX, which while it has almost no recoil at all, also has almost no damage at all. It is one of the weakest weapons in the game. So unless you're landing a headshot every single time, you're generally not going to kill anyone. However, her ability gets a score of 3 because of how strong it is. The ability to throw cameras outside or anywhere really and get extra vision from what you didn't have before is just too good to pass up. And that gives her utility a score of 2 because it helps the team a lot, but it definitely requires the team to coordinate and also not scan. One of the biggest disadvantages of Valkyrie is that people can scan on her camera, especially when they shouldn't, which generally reveals to the attackers that there's a Valkyrie camera somewhere and they'll track it down. But that doesn't happen nearly as often in Plat or Diamond lobbies. It's just something to consider. For her relevance, she got a score of 2 because she is picked fairly frequently on some specific sites, especially ones where you can throw a camera outside that will go into a tree or something and will be very hard for the attackers to find, but will have a lot of vision on a lot of the map. And that is it for the operators with a score of 8. Next we have 2 operators with a score of 7, the first one being Ella. Ella was once the highest picked operator in the entire game and has now kind of been brought down a lot. While she is a really good roamer, she does have her huge disadvantages. This one I think is going to be the most controversial one of them all. I gave her weapons a score of 1. For this, I was keeping in mind the lower ranks and people who don't have the best recoil control. Ella is still super strong in the right hands of someone who has amazing recoil control and can just, they'll decimate everyone with her. However, for almost everyone else, her Scorpion has way too much kick to it. And then her other primary weapon, which is the shotgun, for the most part, it's fairly useless. It has its niche moments, but you'd almost always want to take the Scorpion over it. However, for her abilities, I gave her a score of 2 because having Grismont mines at doorways or places where people are going to push in is super strong because it lets your team know where they're pushing from and disorients them so that you can push them while they're disoriented. And then for the utility, she got a score of 2 because of her Grismonts and how they help her team. Put them at a doorway or a breach hole. As soon as it goes off, your team knows where they are and can push them. And for relevance, she also got a score of 2 because she is still a strong roamer. However, she's not picked nearly as often as she once was. For the most part, if you want to pick a roamer, you'll usually choose someone like Vigil over Ella any day. And the other operator with a score of 7 is Cappy Tau. For Cappy Tau, I gave him a score of 1 for his weapons because his M249 LMG is still fairly weak and not really a good pick, and his Para, although it got buffed, is still not nearly as strong as I'd hope it would be. But I think he kind of has the same curse as Valkyrie, as weaker weapons because his utility is fairly strong. For his ability, he gets a score of 2, mainly because both of his projectiles ignore ADSs, so he's very strong for trying to plant on bomb. For his utility, he got a score of 2 as well because he works really well with the team and really works when you're trying to coordinate a push, mainly because of the smokes. And then his fire can also be used in other situations besides just disabling a diffuser. You can use it to stop someone from bandit tricking or stop someone from flanking you while you push in. For relevance, I gave him a score of 2, which I think might be a little controversial because he's really not picked that much, but he's still pretty relevant to the meta, just because of how often you want to smoke and plant. That's why he's so relevant. Alright, we have 3 more operators to go through, 2 of them getting a score of 6. The first one being Alibi. This one I think a lot of people will be upset about, but like I said with my Astral, it's very hard to tell what score she should get since she's so new to the game. But for her weapons, I gave her a score of 2 because her Storm is very, very good. It has 0 recoil, however, has very low damage. It has the same issue as Valkyrie. It's a pea shooter with no recoil. And we won't talk about the AA-12 shotgun because it's basically useless. For her ability, I gave it a score of 1 because remember, this is Platinum and Diamond lobbies. Very few people get tricked by the Alibi clone. Almost everyone in Platinum and Diamond is going to drone out sights and be very, very careful not to shoot any of the clones. So her ability is pretty much useless. For utility, I gave it a score of 2 though because the few times that it does work, it does tell you where the enemy is, what operator they are, and kind of gives you an idea of where they're pushing from. So if it ever does work, it has really good team utility. It's kind of like Legion where it lets people know where they're pushing from. And it can also help the team a lot if Alibi makes a call out whenever she notices one of her clones has been destroyed. And then for relevance, I gave her a score of 1 because she's very rare to see in the higher level lobbies, mainly because just a lot of other people offer better kits than her. I'd say out of the 2 Maestros, definitely picked way more than Alibi. Alibi is mainly more of a gimmick operator. But moving on, next operator is Frost, who also got a score of 6. Frost's weapons, she got a score of 2. Her Super 90 is a decent shotgun, but just like I said with Valkyrie, fairly weak because it's a semi-auto. However, her 9mm C1 has one of the highest damage of all defending weapons, but has a super, super low fire rate. People can basically run in between your bullets and makes her incredibly weak. But if you ever do land a shot, it's going to be pretty devastating. For her ability, I gave it a score of 2 because if it ever does work, it is super strong, but kind of like Alibi, it'll get found a lot. The reason why I gave Frost a score of 2 for her ability and Alibi a score of 1 is because for Alibi, it's way easier to see the clone and know to destroy it. Meanwhile, with a Frost map, people can easily miss it on a drone, jump in, and get caught in it. And whenever the ability does work, people immediately get downed, go down to 50% health, and cannot be downed again. That's overall a pretty good benefit if it does catch someone. For her utility though, I gave her a 1, mainly because she doesn't really help the team that much. She only really helps them if her Frost mat does grab someone, and even then, it's not really helping the team so much as just securing her a kill. And for her relevance, I gave her a 1 because you never see Frost at Platinum or Diamond unless someone's just memeing or trying to go for clips. And then we have the last operator, the only operator with a score of 5. No one else scored 5 or lower. Caveira stands alone. Now I know, this is probably the one I'm going to get reamed out the most for. Anytime I ever talk shit about Caveira, everyone comes into comments saying how I'm stupid, how I don't know how to play the game, that she's actually an amazing operator. Trust me, I've played enough in Platinum and Diamond to know that she is a very rare pick, and if she ever does get picked, you just usually assume that your teammate's trolling. For her weapons, she gets a score of 1 because the M12, very weak gun, very low fire rate, just really not a weapon you want. The Spaz 15 is a decent choice. However, if you're going to try to shoot someone at close range, you might as well just use a pistol instead of a shotgun. And then for her pistol, that's mainly her primary weapon. It is a super good weapon if you can get up close, but like I said, at Platinum and Diamond, people are going to hear you or see you coming, so they'll be ready for the flank, and your pistol's really not going to be that beneficial. Her ability, though, does get a score of 2 not because of Silent Step. Silent Step, a lot of people in the higher ranks will hear you coming and prepare for the flank. However, if she ever does interrogate someone, that is a huge turning point for any team. There was the match that we played the other day where I was playing with Rob and Shane, and we were on bank, and we were looking like we might win the match, and then one of our teammates gets interrogated, we lose the round, it goes to overtime. All because of that one interrogation. However, interrogations are very hard to come by in the higher ranks, they're mainly a lower rank thing. And then her utility, although if you do get an interrogation, it benefits the team so much, I still gave her utility a 1 because for the most part, she rarely benefits the team. Her Silent Step is very selfish, doesn't help the team at all. The interrogation is incredibly useful to the team, very rarely happens. And if, say, Cav is to die early on, her ability is useless. If you have a roamer like Jaeger, who at least puts on his ADSs, his ability still has some use after his death. And for relevance, again, a score of 1 because Cav is never picked at the higher ranks. And that is every single DLC operator thus far covered. Now, I did say at the beginning of the video I would have 2 separate lists. However, after going through everything and talking about every single operator, I have almost 0 things to change. The only thing that I would change is to move Vigil from a score of 9 to a score of 11. Or not necessarily changing his score, changing which order you should buy him in. So even though his score is brought down because of his utility and his ability, he's still an incredibly strong operator to have, and I almost recommend everyone to buy him. So if you move Vigil up to 11, I would say that's my list personally. Everything else stays exactly the same. If you have any disagreements with me at all, feel free to argue in the comments. I may not respond to everything because I'm sure every single person will have a different order. I know for a fact that so many people are going to tell me that Cav or Frost should be number 1 on the list. I'll argue with some people if it makes sense. But that's going to cover the entire operator buying guide. And just to future-proof this video, since a lot of these C-School videos become obsolete once a single update comes through, here is an alternative view of the list for the future SMG nerf. So this means when the SMG 11, SMG 12, and Bearing 9 all get nerfed. This is how the list should look. The only big changes are that Dhoka and Vigil both got knocked down to around 8 or 7. And then although it doesn't show up in the list, Echo and Habana do take a hit with their Bearing 9 getting nerfed. Habana is still such a crucial operator, and even without her Bearing 9, her Type 89 can still hold its own. She's still a number 1 pick operator. And with Echo's recent buff, he has no reason to be dropped down to a 9 or lower. Both of them will stay, but it is something to consider that both of them will be greatly affected by the Bearing 9 nerf. But everything else stays the same. So I'll leave the original list up while I finish out this video, and just to clarify, just in case somehow someone gets confused even after they watch the entire video, or if they just skip right to the end, the way this chart works is that you should buy the operators in these groups. The first 2 being Habana and Mira, and then the second 2 being Legion and Buck. And then when you finish that, you can buy any of the operators in the 10 score, but you should buy them all before moving on to the 9, etc. And normally this is where I do a quiz portion for this video, but this video is kind of cut and dry. It's all information. I can't really quiz you on any of this because I just presented it. It's all personal opinion. So there won't be any quiz today, but in the next few Siege School episodes, I do have quiz portions planned. Just I have no idea when those are going to be done. And again, I'm sorry for taking such a long break on these. I realized I didn't really want to make them week to week because it really stressed me out and made me not want to do them. And also decrease the quality by a shit ton. You can notice in a lot of the previous episodes, I had a lot of minor mistakes, especially editing mistakes, where I would mess up a sentence, but I wouldn't cut it out. So to make these videos better, I'm trying to take a lot more time in actually making them perfectly. I say that now, even though I probably did make one editing mistake throughout this video and I just never noticed. But yeah, I'll make the next video whenever I have time and whenever I feel like making it. In the meantime, thank you guys for watching this one. Hope you guys enjoyed this Siege School episode. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.